Hello and welcome to About 6 Acres. Today we're going to do something fun
We're going to take a walk.
around the property. So one of our big pillars at About 6 Acres is definitely stewardship. And one of the ways that we keep track of our stewardship is by keeping track of our native flora and fauna and things that are here before we were even here. Good things that were here before we were even here.
Not the goats who are nibbling at my feet. The baby goats are out. So if I get knocked over or one jumps on my head, you're not surprised.
But I'll be laughing. Yeah, we figured it would be a nice time to just take a walk. We keep track of them and see if they come back year after year. Now, some of them bloomed earlier this month and they're not blooming right now, so we'll make note of them. But in the meantime, we want you to see what is out here, and maybe you have some of them too.
Yeah, and they may be called a different name in your area. So we're going to be starting out behind the boys' pen, behind Clark and Missigo, and next to Sean and Gus, in an area that is sort of out like on the lowest point of the property. So everything flows down here into this area, and you can see it's overgrown because it gets very wet when it rains. And so the mower gets stuck, so we left it to grow a little bit. We did cut it down several weeks ago, but it still has grown back. There's like wetland plants in there because, again, the water table is very high. There's a stream behind it that we share with our neighbor that goes into his pond. The baby goats are out here, so if they're jumping on us and you hear them, they're having fun. But we try to mow around the boys' property and in between so we can access here. But we got some cool plants in here. We have a lot of wild blackberries, and you can see how tall these stems are. Some of them are going like 12 feet high, and there's a bunch of berries in the middle. Ooh, there's one. I want to get one. But some blackberries in here. Megan does one. We also have a native plant that'll start flowering. I believe I see one already, but it's a type of native blue mist flower right here. So it'll have little clumps of these flowers that will attract butterflies in the fall. Really, really cool. And that's about as high as they get. So if you're looking for a pollinator plant to attract, get some blue mist flower, or check if you have some native ones in your backyard. But yeah, there's a mix between those, the blackberries, sweet gums, and look who joined us. Our buddies. Yeah? You found us? They want to go exploring too. So we have a lot of sweet gum in here and around the property. And those are those taller trees in the middle. The girls and the boys like eating those. And so they'll nibble off what they can reach. But the plants will produce a ball seed that has like spikes on it. And if you get the green ones that have not fallen off the tree yet, and you soak them in like an alcohol or make a tincture out of them, they have the same property in them as the active property that's in Tamiflu, but they will spread everywhere. You know, we're not doctors or anything, but this is what we've come across doing our own research and asking others about. So do your own research when you're making your own tinctures and herbal medicines, but one thing we may have to try.
We have a lot of cool plants in the woods. However, we haven't been there in a while. And a lot of that stems from just how wet it's been. It's easy to get your shoes stuck in there. We do have a creek that crosses, probably two creeks that cross through there, which also get flooded. And so we don't go as frequently as we probably should. So that's one of the things that in the coming weeks, we'll probably make it a priority to go in there and explore a little bit. And we have always wanted to make a path through it, so that might be something that we start to work on. Let me just show you one of our goats' favorite foods, which they don't go by the woods very much, and that's why I think we have a little pocket here of wax myrtle.
Yeah, and it's super fragrant. I mean, you can crush the leaves, take the leaves, and as long as there's no insects that can sting you, when you crush them, they have like a sappy evergreen type smell to them. Some of the plants will produce berries on them, a waxy berry that you can collect and pull off and actually melt down and save the wax and make candles out of them for Christmas time.
Like after you crushed it, it's such a good smell, like a hearty smell. And then the other thing we have a lot of are these cedar trees, which are not actually cedars.
Yeah, it's a type of juniper, but they do have the seeds on them that have the, you can collect these and use the wild yeast to ferment things, flavor your gin. They're all over the place.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the trees that we've been trying to figure out what to do, because we might have to cut a few of these. They just kind of take over and don't let some of the other more native trees thrive. When we first moved down here and we planted our apple trees, is that you don't want to plant them near cedar trees because there is that thing called cedar rust, which does affect the apples. And I think the apples are still edible.
And we have these climbing roses on different parts of the property, but thanks to the birds, because they'll eat the little fruits that'll have the seeds in them. And we have not done that yet, is collect the hips. So when these form into little rose hips, you can collect those, use for teas and things like that. We have not done that yet because we are behind the 8 ball on that.
Well, there's always something that we want to do. But we do have quite a few of these around the property, which is cool to see. The cultivars of roses are really hard to grow here. You have that weird disease, what is that called? We haven't planted any, but it's kind of nice to enjoy for a couple of weeks in the spring to be able to enjoy some roses. They're wild and native and just, they're kind of pretty, and they smell like what regular roses smell like.
We have a couple entrances to the woods. We have that we used to go back and just explore and take a walk, but we have not been back here in a while. And there's some cool native plants back here too, because again, this is a more shady area, so you're gonna find different things. And one of my favorite plants is American beautyberry, and this will grow all over the property. And when they're in the sun and stuff, they will produce these clusters of berries that we've made jellies out of, but the birds love them. So we got a carnivore of some kind, a baby. It's got incisors. I don't know if it's a cat, coyote, baby coyote. I don't know. But it's pretty neat. Vertebrae, legs. There's a hip. That is like cleaned off. We did see vultures the other day. That is, yeah, that's a baby. You can see the juvenile teeth in there. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Coyotes, we see bobcats. Obviously, we've talked about that before because that's how we lost Ryan. So it's always something around here in the woods, which is one of the reasons why we don't encourage them to necessarily come into the woods. But it would be cool if they did eat some of the brush on the border of the woods, because I think that would also help out a little bit.
So we have about 3 acres of woods behind us. And this entry, it's like flooded because that's where the little stream comes in. And again, the downfall, so you can't cross it. But there's other entries that we can go in and around. But again, we haven't been in there in a long time, so stuff is probably overgrown. Little goslings are still out waiting for us. Hey, littles. Well, around the property, there's a lot of these large fire ant mounds we really can't do anything about. So we just leave them because we rarely come out here. But when they're around the animal pens, we will put down some material when we have it. We don't like putting any chemicals down, so we'll put like First Saturday Lime, boiled water, or when we have it, can afford it, the orange oil. And one almost backed up on one fire mound. So normally I'm the one who finds them and stands in them, and we'll realize later on that I'm eaten to bits.
Where you see these dried heads, these were all self-heal. So we did cut some down. Little baby's going to town with it.
I use the 10% rule and leave the rest to reseed and, for wildlife. So, because you don't need that much.
Exactly. So we did cut some down to try to make a salve. I never say that word correctly, but we did cut some down. And obviously you see there are so many still there. So next year we hope to be able to see plenty of it. The interesting part is the first year that we were here, like the first spring that we were here, we moved out here in the fall. We didn't see this many. Then I'm going to show you one of my favorites, which I didn't think we were going to see. But one of my favorite wildflowers is something that really we only see for about 2 weeks out of the year. And that's this wildflower that is actually an orchid, which I find fascinating. So it grows pretty tall out of the ground. And this was one of the ones where we only saw 2 the first year that we were here. And since then, we've seen so many, even out in the front.
I think that's the thing, when it's left untouched or unmowed, maybe the non-natives or the aggressive growers will outcompete these. And so we've mowed here a couple of times, and so the seeds are in the seed bank, so maybe they're like, oh, now it's my opportunity to show off and pop up, which is good. Mm-hmm. But you can, like we do here in this area, this is sort of part of our orchard in between the woods in here. So we leave this pretty tall because we got, native grasses. We have native flowers, rudbeckia, these little flowers too. Different things for the pollinators to stop by. But once they're done flowering, I think we'll come in and mow because that'll help with the grasshopper situation.
And then let's take a look at some of the rudbeckia because we have so many and they're just starting to come in. So we have a couple of here, and I don't know if they are all, there's a lot up there. I don't know if they're all the same variety, but for sure they are so pretty and some of them look so different.
We have some new trees growing here, a type of oak tree. So you can see the leaves on that oak there, and then all this new growth happening. So it's good to see these. We're in that post-oak savanna type area between like the piney woods. So we're sort of on a dual habitat zone. So we got a lot of oaks, pines in different areas, but yeah, oaks are good to have because they're host to different pollinators and moths and butterflies.
In this area we have an electric pole, and so a lot of birds hang out over here. And last year I think it was, or maybe the year before, we did have to cut some Bradford pears that probably birds had pooped some seeds and they started to grow. And Bradford pears are probably the worst tree that you could have. They just are so brittle, they grow very fast, don't have very good roots. Storms will knock them down and they create so much chaos, and of course they spread so easily.
Then we have another variety of these little flowers, Virginia Meadow Beauty, so they'll be in open meadows, wet areas. And we had these in the field down below behind where the goats were down there, so it's pretty cool to see them migrate up here. It means it's got to be a little wet, but yeah. And then we have a lot of the rudbeckia going on, and this is all natural. We didn't throw any seeds here. It's just it grows along the sides of the roads and stuff, and just in the seed bank, transplanted by birds. Got more.
And you can just see how cool it is with the foliage, how it's got that purple. It's very cool. Nature is cool.
We have a couple trees that are fruiting native persimmons. So they're very tiny persimmons. And so the birds and rabbits and stuff will carry them. And so we have a lot of saplings growing in the middle of the pasture, in the middle of the orchard. So when it's time, again, we'll mow over this area. Little buddies still coming. So the peaches that we still have on our tree are starting to turn and ripen. That one's a little hard yet, but we may have some for a cobbler and stuff. They're not going to be like cosmetically perfect. At least we're going to have a handful. Now, again, I'll have to go around and pick up the ones that have fallen. We're going to skip through our peaches because it's not a cultivar tour, it's a wildflower tour. And in the beginning of our homestead journey, we had put this area to be called Wildflower Ridge, and so we mowed everything down. We didn't till it up or really expose much, so there's still native grasses in here, native seeds in here, but we applied a lot of wildflower seeds that first year, and we had a drought. So I think that affected a lot of the germination and what's in here and a lot of the diversity. But again, we have rudbeckia in here. We have some spotted bee balm coming up, which is over there. We also have some Indian blanket. A lot of, again, native grasses, switchgrass that we planted for erosion control. So if you see those big clumps of grasses on the edge, that's going to be switchgrass, and those roots go super, super long. So we're hoping that holds in that soil from washing down toward the house. That's the Mexican hat. So we got a few of those. We have some partridge peas. So some nitrogen fixers, right, that are in the ground. So they'll produce pods and seeds that'll spread. And I think these are called rabbit foot clover. So that's another native one. So native clover that'll spread. And they got these little puffy flower heads to them. Here's the Indian blanket flower. So another type of native grass. I believe this is the gamma grass. So I think this is what's seeded, but these are all like a winter variety. That's why they're all dried up now. But that's pretty cool. So I think this was the like hairy vetch that comes up. So there's a native one, and so the pods like twist when they're ready to pop and the seeds come out. So another nitrogen fixer. So there you can see the pod of the hairy vetch, and basically when it dries, it basically twists itself into this corkscrew, releasing the pods. And then we have some mallows that were planted, and they've been coming up sporadically. So, but they're very small. A standing cypress that finally came up just in time for the hummingbirds. But I don't know if it's going to be enough for all the hummingbirds that we have around here. But this is, again, I think that's what came in the wildflower mix. So it takes a couple years for certain wildflower plants to get going. So we're hoping as we maintain this, we get a better flush each year of wildflowers and grasses. But it's cool. It's very tall, and it's got these little tubes for the bees and hummingbirds. More of the climbing roses that basically originate under this persimmon tree. So this is, I believe, the male tree, and I think we have just one female on the property where we've gotten some fruit from, and they're the small fruits. They're not the Asian persimmon, the giant ones. And this is what I was talking about. So we had planted, again, the switchgrass. So we got a couple mounds wherever you see this, 1, 2, 3, a couple over here that we bought, again, for this hill, really for erosion control, because those roots go really, really deep and can hold that moisture in. So awesome to see that going, because that was a mess. When we bought the property, it was just like a saturated area, nothing would grow. So now we're just letting the native grasses and things go crazy.
We have another mound closer to the house of all of these spotted bee balms, and they are just very cool because they are very unique looking. And yeah, we kind of just left it there. Again, our purpose is not really to upset the balance of what we have. We try to work within it as best we can because, you know, some things it might be the last of, as Nick tells me every time I ask him, what is this, and pull it.
Yeah, after you pull it, but there's little pollinators that go in, little flies and everything that go in to these. So it's like spotted bee balm because of these spotted little flowers in there.
They look like little orchid tongues. Pretty cool. But the crazy thing about this is it literally just smells like menthol.
Goats eating, and the goats are eating this in here. They like that. That's one of their favorites.
That's like curly dock or something?
Yeah, it's a type of dock, which is good. So we have these 2 trees on part of our property that is mainly where all the goats go when they forage, because it's got the wax myrtle around it. And so I got the wax myrtle here, in which they completely ate down like last year, but now it's come back. But amongst the wax myrtle, we have Japanese honeysuckle. It's one of the invasives that just grows and it's hard to pull out if you don't get it by the roots. We have some blackberries in here. What else we got? Poison ivy in here. This is the male persimmon tree. And then that one is the female over there. But yeah, this is the goats usually come here, eat the wax myrtle, but they'll eat some of the berries. They're not too keen on the poison ivy, even though goats can eat poison ivy, and then basically eat the berries and everything and poop them out and basically negate the growth of them, so sterilize them. It's pretty cool. And then our female persimmon, there might be small fruits in there, but I think what happened is the one year that I pruned them is they got really good growth, so I might have to go in and prune them again. I'm trying to see if we can see any of the small fruits that may have been picked off by the birds. And there's some tiny ones all the way up there. Little green pods. Here's one. So they will get orangey brown, and they sort of have like this tamarind honey type flavor to them, but then there's really large seeds in there. And again, you can make jelly, jam, breads out of it. I really like it. I really like it when they're super, super ripe. If they're not ripe, they are very astringent and your mouth will tell you. And I think this is one of a regular cedar elm, like a type of elm tree. It might be rough leaf, because if you feel it, right, the bottom is smooth and the top is very rough. So I think this is, I may be wrong, trees are hard, but it looks like a type of elm. So this is our hedgerow of blackberries that we've left, wild blackberries. They got thorns in them. And we picked a little bit last year to have for like jam and everything, but the birds usually get first pick. There's a lot in here that we can harvest. I think maybe the rain this morning sort of slowed them down, but yeah, look at all the berries. And this will be fruiting next year, so everything that fruits this year we'll probably cut back. Yeah, you know which ones are really ripe. Very nice.
They taste so good.
Our sassafras, the sassafras tree. You can see the different leaves on here, different colors. There's mittens, 3 fingers. You have these, so this tree, I believe, makes sarsaparilla if you get the roots. But you can also choose some of the leaves and some of the bark, but it's got like that root beer birch type smell to it. So you can use it for teas, but not too much. Yeah, it tastes like a very strong root beer.
And so we ran our fence, but technically we've got about 10 feet of our property here. Actually, I think it goes to the road. So the dogs come by, they're our neighbor's dogs. They're kind of harmless, although our goats freak out. This tree is very, very cool. I love the different leaves, like Nick was saying. I don't know if I can think of any other tree that's got leaves so varied either. I might have to look that up. Or maybe you know. Is there another tree that is like that? Let us know. We had a handful of these pine trees that have the really big, long pine needles. And I don't know what variety this is. Do you, Nick?
No, but we have...
Loblolly, maybe?
I don't know. We have long leaf pine.
Maybe.
Short leaf pine.
Yeah, so these are kind of cool, but we had left it there and said this is going to be one of our future Christmas trees, but we didn't prune it. Or maybe it was never going to grow on this side. So we kind of wanted a tree that would be covered on all sides. So I think this was supposed to be Christmas tree 2027, and I think it's just going to be an outside tree 2025, 2026, 2027. I don't think it's going to change. So let us know if you have any of these plants growing around your property and what you call them, if you call them something different. Thank you so much for coming along with us on our tour of native plants on our property.
Twyla says hello.
Twyla loves everything. She loves attention. But seriously, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
And as always, you're awesome and you are loved.
Until next time.
A little waddle waggle. The butt goes one way.